Ikotumo, a quiet village nestled deep in the heart of Nigeria, was a place where life moved at its own unhurried pace. The sun rose with the songs of birds and fell amidst the chatter of families gathered around their evening meals. Surrounded by lush greenery, the village was dotted with small clay houses, narrow footpaths, and a large communal square where the villagers gathered to share stories, celebrate festivals, and hold meetings. It was a place where simplicity thrived, and traditions ran deep, binding the people to their roots and to each other. In this small, close-knit community lived two identical twin sisters, Neoma and Nena. They were born moments apart, and from the day they came into the world, they were inseparable. Their parents, Ekan and Ifema, often marveled at their daughter's bond. The villagers, too, often whispered that such closeness among twins was a rare and powerful blessing. These girls, the elders would say, share one spirit. What one feels, the other feels. They are two bodies with one soul. Neoma was the dreamer. Her infectious laugh echoed through the village, and her eyes always seemed to sparkle with dreams of a world far beyond Ikotumo. She was known for her curiosity and her love for stories about faraway lands. Her room was filled with objects she had collected, seashells from traders, brightly colored fabrics, and little trinkets that hinted at the adventures she longed to have. Her imagination painted pictures of bustling cities, grand palaces, and exotic places she had only heard about in tales. Nena, in contrast, was the grounded one. She was hardworking, practical, and deeply content with the life they had. While Neoma would dream about the future, Nena found joy in the present. She loved the rhythm of village life, the vibrant colors of market day, the smell of freshly harvested cassava, and the laughter of children playing in the square. She was the kind of person who noticed the small, beautiful details of everyday life, like the way the sun cast golden hues over the fields at dusk or the sound of rain on the thatched roofs during the wet season. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, like two sides of the same coin. Neoma would pull Nena into her dreams, urging her to imagine what could be, while Nena would ground Neoma, reminding her of the beauty and stability of what already was. Their bond was unshakable, a testament to the strength of their love and understanding. Life in the village revolved around the fields, markets, and festivals. The twins often helped their parents with chores, weaving mats or tending to the cassava farm. They were a familiar sight, always together, laughing and chattering as they worked. Their synchronized movements and easy banter made them a source of admiration and joy for the villagers. To see them was to see harmony in motion. As the twins grew older, love entered their lives in very different forms, setting the stage for a future neither of them could have anticipated. For Neoma, love came in the form of Uche, a dashing young man from a neighboring village. Uche was known for his charm, wealth, and confidence, traits that made him the envy of many men and the object of admiration for many women. He had an aura of sophistication that stood out in the rustic simplicity of Ikotumo. Uche met Neoma at a village festival, a grand affair held during the yam harvest season. The festival was a celebration of abundance, with music, dance, and feasts that brought together villagers from far and wide. Uche arrived dressed in a fine wrapper, his wrists adorned with gold bracelets that caught the light as he moved. His confident demeanor and quick wit immediately caught Neoma's attention. "Neoma," Uche said, his voice smooth as honey. "You are like the moon on a clear night, radiant, mesmerizing, and outshining everything around you." Neoma blushed, flattered by his words and captivated by his sophistication. Uche courted her with sweet promises and thoughtful gifts, brightly colored wrappers, necklaces, and stories of a life beyond Ikotumo. He spoke of cities with paved roads, mansions, and carriages. To Neoma, Uche represented the life she had always dreamed of, a life filled with adventure and luxury. In contrast, Nena's love story was quieter but no less significant. She had known Ikenna, a kind and hard-working farmer, for years. Ikenna was not a man of grand gestures or extravagant words, but his actions spoke volumes. He often helped the twins' family during planting season, brought Nena ripe mangoes from his farm, and repaired the family's tools without being asked. His reliability and thoughtfulness had won her over long before she realized it herself. One evening, as the sun set over the fields, Ikenna and Nena sat under a large iroko tree, sharing roasted yams. The orange and pink hues of the sunset bathed them in a warm glow, making the moment feel timeless. "Our life may not be filled with riches," Ikenna said, his voice steady and sincere, "but it will be filled with love and hard work. That is enough for me, if it's enough for you." Nenna looked at him and smiled, knowing in her heart that it was indeed enough. She admired his honesty, humility, and the steadiness he brought to her life. Their relationship was built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values, and it gave Nenna a sense of peace and security that she cherished. But while love seemed to bloom in Ikotumo, darkness was brewing beneath the surface. Uche, despite his outward charm and wealth, was a man driven by insatiable greed. Though he had more than most, it was never enough for him. He yearned for greater power, more wealth, and the kind of influence that would make him untouchable. One evening, during a gathering in the market square, Uche overheard a conversation about a local occultist who could grant unimaginable riches. Intrigued, he approached the speaker, an old trader known for his knowledge of supernatural practices. "The occultist can make a man richer than kings," the trader said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "But such wealth comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay the price?" Uche hesitated for a moment but nodded. His greed had already clouded his judgment. Late one night, Uche ventured deep into the forest to find the occultist. The journey was treacherous, with twisting paths and eerie animal calls piercing the silence. The forest seemed alive, its shadows shifting and its trees whispering secrets he couldn't understand. The air grew colder as he pressed on, his determination fueled by visions of the wealth he craved. When he finally reached the occultist's hut, he was met with an unsettling sight. The hut was dimly lit by flickering candles, and the air was thick with the smell of burning herbs. Skulls, charms, and strange carvings adorned the walls, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance in the candlelight. The occultist, an elderly man with piercing eyes and a voice as cold as the night, sat cross-legged on the floor. His presence was both magnetic and menacing, drawing Uche in while making his skin crawl. "You seek wealth, but wealth demands sacrifice," the occultist said, his voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "Are you prepared?" "Yes," Uche replied, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his heart. "What must I do?" The occultist leaned closer, his expression grave. "A twin," he said. "Twins carry a rare spiritual power. The blood of one will unlock the riches you desire. You must bring me the life of the one closest to you." Uche froze, the weight of the demand sinking in. His mind raced, and for a moment, he considered turning back. But his greed soon overpowered his conscience. He thought of Nenna, the quieter twin, who seemed more connected to the earth and the village's traditions. Surely, she would fulfill the occultist's requirements. Blinded by ambition, Uche agreed, sealing a pact that would change the lives of the twins forever. A few nights later, Uche put his plan into motion, his mind a swirling tempest of greed and trepidation. He approached Neoma with calculated charm, his voice dripping with feigned affection. "Meet me by the riverbank tonight. I have something special planned for you," he said, his eyes betraying none of the malevolence in his heart. Neoma's face lit up with anticipation. Always eager for Uche's attention, she agreed without hesitation. That evening, she dressed in her finest wrapper, the vibrant colors reflecting her inner excitement. She carefully pinned her hair, adorned herself with her favorite beads. Neoma invited her sister Nenna to join her on a stroll, but Nenna wasn't willing to go anywhere. As she stepped into the cool night, her thoughts were filled with romantic imaginings, unaware of the darkness awaiting her. The riverbank was serene, bathed in a pale silver glow from the moonlight. The gentle rustling of leaves and the soft croaks of frogs created a tranquil symphony. Neoma arrived, her heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Her eyes searched for Uche, her lips curling into a smile as she imagined the surprise he had promised. But instead of the loving gesture she expected, the night took a harrowing turn. Sighting only Neoma at the scene, the oracle was set, someone was to be sacrificed that night. Uche knew it wasn't him, so he had no choice. Uche emerged from the shadows, his expression cold and unreadable. Before Neoma could react, he lunged at her, his grip firm and unrelenting. The betrayal struck her like a physical blow, and her mind reeled in disbelief. "Uche, "What are you doing?" she gasped, struggling against his hold. But Uche said nothing. The weight of his actions bore down on him, but his greed and desperation pushed him forward. He silenced her cries with ruthless efficiency, fulfilling the occultist's gruesome ritual. Neoma's screams pierced the night, echoing through the trees, but they were soon swallowed by an eerie stillness. Her lifeless body crumpled to the ground as Uche fled into the darkness, believing his fortune was now secured. At dawn, Nena woke with a strange unease gnawing at her. The house was unusually quiet. She called out for Neoma, but there was no answer. Panic surged within her as she searched the house, then the yard, and finally the village. Each step was accompanied by a growing sense of dread. When she reached the riverbank, the sight that greeted her shattered her world. Neoma's lifeless body lay motionless, her vibrant wrapper stained with blood. Nena collapsed to her knees, a wail of anguish escaping her lips. "No. Neoma, no," she cried, clutching her sister's body as tears streamed down her face. The villagers soon gathered, their faces etched with horror and sorrow. They stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the brutality that had befallen their peaceful community. Nena's cries of grief pierced their hearts, and many wept openly, mourning the loss of one so full of life. "Who did this? Who would take my sister from me?" Nena sobbed, her voice trembling with despair. As the villagers tried to comfort her, Nena's sharp eyes caught a peculiar detail, a piece of fabric near the scene. Her breath hitched as she recognized it as part of Uche's distinctive wrapper. Suspicion took root in her mind, its tendrils tightening around her grief. That evening, Nena gathered her strength and confronted Uche in front of the entire village. Her voice trembled with a mix of rage and sorrow as she stepped forward. "Uche, you were with Neoma last night. What have you done?" Uche's eyes widened, and he stumbled over his words. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. The villagers, fueled by Nena's anguish and their own outrage, pressed him for answers. Their voices grew louder, more insistent, until Uche's carefully constructed facade crumbled. He dropped to his knees, his shoulders shaking as he confessed. "It wasn't supposed to be her," he choked out, tears streaming down his face. "The occultist. He said I needed a twin's blood. I didn't want to do it, but..." Gasps of horror rippled through the crowd. Mothers clutched their children, and men shook their heads in disbelief. The weight of Uche's betrayal was almost too much to bear. The villagers, their sorrow giving way to fury, seized him and dragged him to the authorities. Justice, they vowed, would be swift and unforgiving. The villagers' anger extended to the occultist, whose influence had brought such tragedy to their community. They stormed his hut deep in the forest, destroying his sinister charms and banishing him from Ikotumo forever. The dark cloud that had descended upon their village began to lift, but the scars it left behind were deep and indelible. Uche's trial was swift. His guilt was undeniable, and the court showed no mercy. As he was led away in chains, he begged for forgiveness, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The villagers' grief and anger were too raw, their wounds too fresh. Uche had not only taken Neoma's life but had also shattered the peace of their once harmonious community. Meanwhile, Nena struggled to cope with the enormity of her loss. Her days were consumed by grief, and her nights were haunted by memories of her sister. She spent hours by Neoma's grave, speaking to her as if she were still alive. "You were my other half, Neoma. How do I live without you?" she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Ikenna, ever steadfast, stayed by her side. He didn't offer empty words of comfort, knowing they would do little to ease her pain. Instead, he supported her in quiet, meaningful ways, bringing her food, sitting with her in silence, and reminding her that she was not alone. Together, they planted a tree at the gravesite, a symbol of renewal and remembrance. As the sapling grew, its leaves rustling softly in the breeze, it became a beacon of hope for Nena and the entire village. It was a reminder that life, though fragile, could endure and flourish even in the face of unimaginable loss. Over time, the village began to heal. The memory of Neoma's sacrifice lingered, becoming a cautionary tale told to children as a warning against greed and betrayal. Nena, though forever changed, found a sense of peace in her sister's legacy. She tended to the flourishing tree, drawing strength from its growth. Years later, as she stood beneath its sprawling branches, she whispered, "You live on in my heart, Neoma. In every leaf of this tree, I see you." The wind carried her words into the air, as if delivering them to her sister in the beyond.